Today, we will be looking at another superhero movie. In a time where superhero movies have become dark, gritty, realistic, and semi-adult centered, they have become all the rage, and many are being produced at once. Today, we shall look at one of these dark and depressing superhero movies. A Disney cartoon about a boy and his lovable, puffy healthcare bot. But here's the big twist. I'm only sort of being sarcastic. I guess, or maybe I am being completely sarcastic. I don't know. What is Big Hero 6? Is it a Disney movie, a Marvel movie? What is it? Well, it's kind of both. The 54th film in the Walt Disney Animated Classic series, this movie is based on a team of Marvel heroes. After Disney acquired the rights to Marvel, CEO Bob Iger encouraged the company to explore Marvel Comics for an adaptation. An obscure title was deliberately selected so that the company could have more creative freedom. Head of story Paul Briggs only read a few issues of the comic, and screenwriter Robert Baird even admitted that he has not read the comic at all. This may sound like a bad approach to any source material, but when you think about it, it makes sense. Disney has always met success by adding their own creative input to fairy tales, and applying the same principle to a more obscure comic actually makes a lot of sense. That being said, I haven't read the comic either, so if I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about to any hardcore fans of the comic out there, I apologize. That being said, let's examine the movie on its own. Taking place in the fictional, futuristic San Francisco, the film starts with Hiro Hamada, a 14-year-old genius, as he takes part in illegal robot fights. Hoping to have a more positive influence, his older brother Tadashi Hamada shows him the robotics center at his university, and introduces Hiro to his friends Gogo, Wasabi, Honey Lemon, and Fred. Most notably, Hiro meets Baymax, a healthcare robot made by Tadashi. Hiro is given the chance to enroll, and hoping to do so, he presents his invention, mind-controlled microbots, to Professor Callaghan, the head of the robotics department. But after a terrible tragedy occurs, Hiro, Baymax, and friends team up and become superheroes in order to track down the mysterious and hostile man who stole Hiro's invention. The plot, though a bit smaller than I expected, was very solid. It was all very character-driven and easy to follow without being too simplistic. There were some very dark moments in this movie, but more than enough heart and humor to provide contrast, and a decent amount of action to make this film qualify as a legitimate superhero movie in its own right. The plot was in constant motion, bringing us from one development to the next, but never without character development. There were touching moments from start to finish, and you'd think that with all the other elements combined, it would seem clustered and confusing, but it all flowed very smoothly. The writing and the characters made it all work. The writing encapsulated the multiple genres very well. It takes some serious skill to go from a depressing funeral to a humorous situation revolving around a robot's misinterpretation of the surrounding events without seeming dark-humored. Big Hero 6 is an animated comedy, a heartwarming robot movie, and a superhero action movie all at once. It was hilarious, it was heartwarming, and it was just plain cool. I think that because of all the combined genres, this movie could have benefited from a slightly longer runtime, but ultimately it wasn't about throwing together different elements that make up a good movie and trying to force them to their fullest extent, but rather blending these elements together in a nice, neat, consistent package. I guess what I mean to say is that it could have been longer simply because it was so good that I wanted more by the time it was over. Not that I was disappointed with what was already there. The characters were definitely this movie's strong point. Hiro is a character who is constantly developing, depending on what happens throughout the film. Baymax develops too, even though he's a robot, but overall when it comes to Baymax, it's more about figuring out what's already there, or understanding why Tadashi created him, and what he represents. With a very technical, computerish personality, and practically no face, you'd think there would be little emotion and little personality. But the way he expresses himself through body language, combined with Scott Adsid's voice acting, takes this blob of whiteness and turns it into a character with a great deal of personality and a great deal of emotion, even if it's not always straightforward. Baymax may not be a human, but he's human. Hero and Baymax are both great characters, and it's understandable that they would be the ones you see on posters and in commercials. But you have to ask yourself, why is it called Big Hero 6? Well, it's because it's about a team of 6 superheroes, and one of them is big, I guess. Are these characters underdeveloped? Well, technically one might say yes. Here's the way I see it. Hero and Baymax are such strong protagonists that we don't really need a whole lot of character development from anyone else. Not that it wouldn't be an improvement. These characters weren't bland. They were very distinguished, likable, and funny all in their own right. And overall, if the team was just Hero and Baymax, it would have felt pretty lonely. I guess what I'm saying is, the other characters just gave this movie extra good, and as a result, there was little obligation or need to attempt to develop them as well. And ultimately, if nothing else made this movie clustered and confusing, perhaps this would have. Maybe if there's a sequel. We'll see. The combination of genres, in correlation with the characters, was very entertaining. At one point you find yourself asking, is this a robot movie or a superhero movie? But within a minute or so of that question, you just don't care. Because whatever it is, it's beautiful, and you just want to keep watching and see how it turns out. This is the first animated film I've reviewed, isn't it? I think for animation, we'll just combine the categories of visuals and special effects. There's a scoring system I'm not telling you about. The animation was just as good as you'd expect it to be. The visuals were colorful and pleasant to look at, but cool at the same time. And the action was fast-paced, yet fairly easy to follow. Overall, the movie definitely had the look of a Disney animated feature, but at the same time, the necessary elements of a Marvel film were present too. The music was upbeat whenever this was fitting, at other times sad or intense, and still at other times just plain cool. Sound was effective too, especially when it came to the microphones. Just plain cool. I keep saying that, don't I? But I can't stress it enough. You'd believe me if I told you a Disney movie was cute and emotional, right? But what people keep saying is true. Big Hero 6 really has something for everyone. Usually when people say something is good for the whole family, they mean the kids will like it, the older girls will like it too, and maybe the older guys will admit if they think it's funny. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of movies, such as Frozen, that have themes that anyone can appreciate, even if on the surface it only appears to be targeting one age and or gender group. But Big Hero 6 was a movie for everyone on the surface and under the layers. If you like comedies, heartwarming Disney movies, movies about the relationship between humanity and robots, cool action-packed superhero movies, if you like pretty much anything, you'll want to watch Big Hero 6. In a nutshell, Big Hero 6 is a completely ideal combination of Disney and Marvel. It had all the elements that make up one of the more recent, better Disney movies, and a good Marvel superhero movie as well. And it all fit together without being confusing or cluttered. It is an excellent movie all around, and it gets a 9 out of 10. Big Hero 6 is rated PG, containing one rather upsetting death towards the first act, and one scene with a string of jokes of a somewhat thematic nature. The death is a sort of origin story death, but since the film is so linear, we spend a little more time with this character than usual, and it does bring about some of the film's darker moments. Overall though, the action is pretty Y7, and in spite of the one scene, there isn't a consistency of crude jokes that spans the entire movie. Percent-wise, it's a pretty light-toned and family-oriented atmosphere, but outside of extremes, I'm not here to tell you what's okay for your kids and what isn't. That's for you to decide. I don't know what else to say about this movie that hasn't already been said. It's a great movie that deserves the acclaim it's getting, and I highly recommend it. And that's Big Hero 6. If you'd like to see more movie reviews, game reviews by Josh, or cartoon reviews by Matey, check out the Sentient Sock Puppet channel. Have a good one.